What's going on, everybody? It's Retro Jojo back with a part 2 video of the N64 ranking list that I started recently. So I guess I'll jump in right into which games I'll be talking about today. We'll do 9 through 5. So at number 9 is Star Wars Rogue Squadron. I might not. Yeah, there we go. Got the glare off of it. And see that cover art. It's kind of got a battle going on the front. You know, all the Nintendo seal of, player's choice, all that stuff on it. The Rebel Alliance symbol, rather. Really neat artwork. And the box artwork was even more, it stood out more than just the cartridge artwork. But it was released December the 7th, 1998 by LucasArts Gaming and Factor 5, and they worked together on this title. Factor 5 would later go on to release I drew a blank for a second, sorry. Rogue Squadron 2 and Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike on the GameCube. Those were graphical improvements over the 64, the first title. It's not that it looks bad, it's aged since, the inception of the series. The other two look light years better than the original, but we had an expansion pack. The original would actually improve the graphics drastically. It has a story that's kind of set. It's all about Rogue Squadron. So he plays, Luke and I think it's, what is that other guy's name? Wedge Antilles. There, I knew I'd get it eventually. You play as, and you kind of go through missions that weren't in the movies, which is really neat. I believe all the games did that, and obviously there's iconic missions in the later games, and I believe there's some in the 64 game, the first one. I could be wrong about that, but I believe so. It's a great game. It's a Star Wars game. It's got Star Wars, music. It's very iconic, and it has, a lot of different ships that you don't see in the movies. So you got the B-wing, A-wing. You see the A-wing in the movies, and the Y-wing is also in the movies. But there's also like TIE interceptors. I believe you get to see more of TIE bombers. You only see them briefly in Empire Strikes Back. So interesting to see that, and just a lot of different. And then there's unlockable ships as well. The Millennium Falcon. I think in that one you can unlock a car or two. I think you can do that in all three of them. I believe so. If I'm not, I might be wrong about that. I think that's right though. I know the two that I had, both of them on GameCube, you can unlock or use a cheat code for the car. I think it's in the 64 one too. Like I said, not much you can say about it other than it was, for flight combat games, and that was the first one to come out. Yeah, it looked very good, and it plays good gameplay wise. But the layout of the controller, the way that it controls is fine. Everything about the game feels very Star Wars. And the story doesn't drag along like you would. There's some games that you play and it doesn't sit well. It just kind of, you feel like you're dragging your feet through the mud when you play it. So it's just kind of one of those things. If you like a game that progresses very well, and you like Star Wars and you like flight sims, then this is probably, Rogue Squadron would be something that you would probably be interested in. And that is my number 9. So at number 8, I've talked about this game before, and it's very nostalgic for me because for a lot of reasons. That's Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Even the cartridge artwork is just, trying to get it to pick it up. There we go. It's very iconic and it's very fun to play. But not only that, just the cartridge itself, the artwork with the Stormtrooper, and you got the the silver Star Wars lettering is kind of silvery white with the purple Shadows of the Empire behind it. Very interesting, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. You see a stormtrooper on the front of a 64 cartridge. It just, little me blew my mind. Thought it was the coolest thing ever, and it is a great game. It was. I didn't get very far as a child, but I was a child, so you always hand it off to your brother or sister or what have you to beat it for you, or your best friend if you were me. But it was released on December 3rd, 1996. I am looking at something for reference, so if you see me look over a little bit, that's what I'm doing, because I don't remember things like this. I could memorize it, but it's just reference, not just all. It was released by LucasArts as well, LucasArts Gaming, and I just want to say that I'm not in any way, shape, or form taking any kind of copyright for this or making monetizing off of it, just so I don't get flagged, nothing happens. Not making money off of it, not trying to steal anybody else's work, or no copyright infringement intended, like they always say, because it is, it's not legal to do that. So just saying, not trying to do any of that. No copyright infringement intended. Anyway, but Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, probably my favorite Star Wars game. That's why I ranked so high, because it's at number 8 on our list. I can't say enough about it. I've talked about it before. I believe I did a retrospective video on this game, but just to give some brief background on it, Shadows of the Empire is set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Originally, they were going to do a film, between those two said movies, they were going to do another film. And so it would have been New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back, then Shadows of the Empire, then Return of the Jedi. But they kind of canned that, made it it was a comic book project. There was an actual book, which I have not finished reading. It's very interesting, goes into more detail than the game did, both on N64 and it was released on PC. And we'll get into some of those differences a little bit. But because there are some differences, gameplay wise. But it also had merchandise. I mean, it was everywhere. It had merchandise. There were figures. There were ships released that went with said figures. There were comic book packs with figures in them. It was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere during that time. I mean, granted, I was born in '96, so I don't really. My brother and my cousin can probably tell you more. They lived during that time period. They were older than me, so they could have more insight about that, if you will. They would know more about that. I didn't have any of the figures growing up, but I just remember my brother buying that game and having it, and then it was passed down to me. So I played it when I got a little bit older. I played a lot of it, mainly the first and second and third mission, and that was kind of it. A little bit of the fourth mission, but it follows a new character, Dash Rendar, who's basically an armored, to me, an even cooler version of Han Solo. I believe I've said that before in one of my shorts, but I like Dash a little more than Han, and a lot of people don't agree with me on that, and that's okay, because everybody's allowed to have their own view and their own opinion of things. And yeah, it's just my opinion. I like Dash. He's a little cocky, a little arrogant, but at the same time, he still he has humanity. He's not fully turned or cold, and I believe Han Solo has more so of that than maybe Dash does. But Dash just wants to get paid, kind of mentality. He didn't fall into, if you watch Star Wars, then you know what I'm talking about. Han kind of falls in love, and Dash doesn't really do that. Dash is just there to help the rebels and to get paid by the rebels. That's it. And But he does get attached though as the game progresses. When you first start, yes, he is just trying to get paid, but he doesn't get in love type of attached. No, but he does end up having sentiment for the rebels as you progress through it. There's cutscenes and things like that, and you can tell that he actually he wants to protect Luke because he realizes, excuse me, how vital that he is to the Alliance and doesn't want him to be harmed. So he goes out of his way to actually do more than what he was being paid for, and it shows his humanity, and I like that about the character. There's other characters that are introduced. Prince Shizor, we all know Boba Fett. Boba Fett's in the game. IG-88's in the game, and then all your favorite, the iconic, really iconic characters. Boba Fett's iconic. I wasn't saying he wasn't, no discredit, but he's my favorite character in all of Star Wars, so I wouldn't discredit Boba Fett. But nonetheless, the game follows Dash, and you start on Hoth, and you do the Battle of Hoth. And I just remember playing the game for the first time after I was, too little to remember it. I was probably, the first time I probably played it now that I have memory of still, I was probably 5, 6, something like that. And it felt like you were playing the movie. It felt like you were there because you could go into cockpit mode, and this is before Rogue Squadron, the previous game I just talked about. This is before that, so you didn't have that yet. So it was like the very first version of being able to go into cockpit mode, being able to see there's other vehicles or ships or whatever that you're destroying and things like that. This was the first instance of that, so it was very new and fresh, I guess is a way that you could say it, and refreshing back in that time period. And it has decent enough graphics. I'm not gonna say they're not gonna blow your mind now, of course, but if you're like me and you like retro stuff, then yeah, it looks decent enough. It's okay. That's not why you would play a Star Wars game, in my opinion, anyway. There's games that look worse than this game that people lose their minds over still to this day that are like Super Star Wars and things like that. They're still good games. They may not look the best. They may look like butt, but that's okay because, not saying they do, I'm just saying I think they look good. But there's people that don't, and they don't have to play those kind of games. If that's not what you like, then don't, I'm not saying you should play them if that's not what you're into. But if you are, then I think you should definitely play Shadows of the Empire. You get to go through all kind of different missions. There's even a new droid that's like I've never seen before. Never had seen it before. When I finally got where I could finish the whole game, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and the music is nothing less than the best. It's Star Wars at its finest. It has and it's new tracks, stuff that wasn't in any of the movies. So it's all original. And now also Skywalker Sound actually worked on with LucasArts when they were making this. So it's almost like you were playing a movie in a sense. You were playing that movie, but as a video game. And there are stark differences between the N64 and the PC version. There's different, I keep saying that, I'm sorry. There are different cutscenes. The cutscenes are a little bit different from one another. For example, when you play the 64 version, there's actually, it's like pre-rendered, kind of almost like a comic book, I would say. That's how I can describe it. And it has text, and you read the text and then you scroll to the next page. The 64 couldn't do the same thing that the PC could. Didn't have the storage capacity, nor did it have the unit capacity to be able to read something of that scale with full motion video cutscenes, MFV cutscenes. So they had to kind of clip it somehow. The gameplay is I would say exactly the same. It looks a little better on the PC, but that's the stark difference. The PC version, however, has full motion video cutscenes, and it looks great. I've never had the PC version. I would love to have a big box copy of Shadows of the Empire for the PC. Not because I'll probably play it, but just because it'd be cool to just have it. But that's the only difference. Everything else is exactly the same. There's just a small couple, maybe like the box that it shows which, because you can actually like have, it's almost like having attachments, I guess you could say, to Dash's pistol throughout the game when you're on foot, like the on foot missions. But because there's like three different types of missions. There's like ones where you're in a ship of some sort. You can be in his Outrider. There's the snow speeder, this first level, and then there's like a swoop bike chase. So you got that kind of mission, and then you've got on foot missions. Actually, there's like basically two types, and then there's boss battles and things like that. And there's just, it feels brand new. It's a fresh take on Star Wars, in my opinion. I think it's a great game. IG-88 used to terrify me. He makes weird noises, and I used to scream when he came on screen. I do remember that when I was little. His noises terrified me, and it actually still gets on my nerves when you don't know where he's at, and he lands behind you, and then you're dead. That's it. Lots of great memories with it. It's a fun game. It's only a single player. I believe that Rogue Squadron is also single player. They would add the multiplayer to that game later. But Shadows of the Empire has no multiplayer. So once you play through it, there's only really one reason to replay it, and there's like a what if scenario, and I'm not saying what it is because I'm not spoiling it, because some of y'all might want to play that game, and I'm not gonna, if you never played it, and I'm not gonna ruin it, because what's the fun in that? But some of the attachments you can get for his gun, I wanted to talk about that. You can get Seekers, a pulse cannon. Seekers are kind of like little missiles, do more damage. Pulse, it shoots like little pulse bombs out of it. There's a disruptor, there's a stunner, which is like the stunner is weird to me. I always thought it was really weird because it doesn't, if you've ever seen A New Hope, okay, if you've ever seen A New Hope, and when they say, the stormtroopers say set blasters for stun or on stun or what have you, and then it hits Princess Leia, it goes out in like this circular thing. When Dash uses, and I guess it's the same thing, I would assume that it is, it goes out like from his body, like a shockwave. I have no idea why they did that. I guess they couldn't get the rings to go from the gun. I have no idea. That was always weird to me. I never used it. I always saved them. I only got like maybe 4 of them the entire game. There's not very many of them that you can pick up, the attachment or ammo, whatever you want to call it. His regular weapon, the laser, has unlimited ammo. It does have to recharge after it overheats. Gets down to like 0, it'll turn kind of red, and it'll be green when it starts. It'll be like at 100, then it'll start decreasing in color and go to red. It's just a great game. You fight stormtroopers, wampas, snow troopers. There's all kind of enemies, Imperial officers, probe droids. I mean, there's little droids that look like, I don't even know how to describe them. They look like little cameras, and they're turrets. They have turrets on them. They're just all kind of different. There's turrets mounted on, it looks like a stick, but it's like it comes up out of it, and it's like floating. Just a great game. There's all kind of different, there's astromechs that have blasters on them that start firing at you. I remember the first time I seen that, I was like, oh, it's an astromech, and then it just starts shooting at me, and I'm like, because you're getting shot by astromech, and I didn't even know they had weapons. I guess the Empire can afford to mount guns on them, I guess. Give them gun attachments. I have no idea. But it's a great game. And Prince Shizor is basically trying to overthrow Vader, take over the galaxy with the Emperor. Eventually, the Emperor would need him because he's in control of Black Sun. He has a lot of resources. He has a lot of power and prestige in the galaxy. So that was his plan. Make Vader basically lose Luke, or originally it was supposed to be a capture thing. Then he turned it, this is a spoiler, but to an assassination type of thing. where the bounty hunters could actually, or the whatever whoever found him could actually eliminate Luke. So really interesting take on what happened between Empire and Return of the Jedi. Just a great game. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it because it's one of my favorite games. That Star Wars. It's a really great game. Now, let's go to number 7. Spider-Man. This was on the N64, the PlayStation 1. We got to name all of them. The Dreamcast, the Mac, iOS, and on the like a Mac PC back in the day. Remember those? And like before Apple and iPods and everything else, and like Macintosh stuff, like that, like Macintosh, and it was on Windows, so it was on a lot of stuff. I have the 64 version, and I have the second game of this same by the same name, Inner Electro. It's the second one. It was on, I believe it was on PS1 and possibly the Dreamcast, but this one was on the 64. The only two I really knew of, I actually did some research. I didn't even know it was released on like 5 different, formats. Only two I knew of was PlayStation 1, PS1, whatever you want to call it, and the N64, which is the one I have. Love the cover art, but also it's a view of the city from up a skyscraper with the font and everything. It's just great. It's a great game. And it was actually given to me by a friend of mine years ago, many years ago. So, great memories playing that game, and we used to play it together. So, it's lots of great memories. We had a Game Shark, remember those? And he used to put all the cheats in and unlock all the costumes, and just a great time. Just, lots of fun. Can't say anything else about that. Released in November 21st, 2000. And I thought Neversoft worked on this. I could be wrong. Maybe they worked on the PS1 version, but I know Edge of Reality worked on it as well. And as I was looking at the cartridge, I seen Activision. So I don't know if Edge of Reality did this part and Activision did this part for the 64. I'm thinking that's what it is. And then Neversoft maybe did something else, or the PS1, like I said, the PS1 version. And there are differences, just like with Shadows of the Empire, there's a stark difference between the PS1, or I guess every other version of it, and the 64 version. But it's for a Spider-Man game, and of course Marvel was involved with it because it's Marvel, product. But it as a Spider-Man game in general, or a Spider-Man story, or whatever you want to call it, it has some of the most iconic music on the 64, in my opinion. And the reason is I'm a big metal head. So I like heavy metal, I like rock, I like punk, I like stuff, I like music. That kind of music is the stuff that I like. You could go down the list. It's probably most of it I'm going to like. Not a big fan of black metal. Not really. I have my reasons, but anyway, before the time, it being released in 2000, and just the music is very metal heavy, very heavy on the riffs and and each track feels like it belongs to that character. I have to say that it feels like Mysterio's theme, that feels like Mysterio. Venom's, it feels like Venom. Carnage, there's another character, Monster Rock, and I'm not going to go into that because that'll spoil the game. I feel like maybe a little bit. It definitely feels that sequence by itself used to terrify me. There were some other things that creeped me out in the game. You're a kid. You have to look at this. I was a kid then when these games were being made and put out and everything. I was a child. I was not the adult that I am now. Now I can play through it, no nightmares. Back then, all the nightmares. So it's just, but it follows Spider-Man, and there's other characters. Black Cat, Johnny Storm. There's Punishers in it, Daredevil. There's a bunch of Captain America makes an appearance. There's a bunch of good guys, and then the thing that I like about it, there's a bunch of bad guys that you get to see. Mysterio is in it. Venom is in it. Carnage is in it. Doc Ock's in it. Rhino. I mean, there's thugs that you fight. You can use the webbing. He has webbing cartridges you can pick up and health cartridges throughout the game. You can attach to the wall. This was all new. I mean, to people like, yeah, sure, there was Super Nintendo and NES games, and other consoles had their Spider-Man titles. You know, when the first Game Boy came out, I'm sure there was some on it, but this was like, wow, this is how it should look. You can see kind of there's a fog that two characters, I won't name them in case you decide you never played it before and you, hey, I want to check it out. They want to take over the town, you know, the whole city of New York, or New York as a whole, rather, and they use this like fog, and so there's this fog below the city. You can't see anything below, which they use to their advantage for the hardware at the time. But the first mission's like a bank robbery is taking place, and Spider-Man's trying to stop them, you know, save civilians. It is Spider-Man, and it's still one of the best games to this day to me that bears the name Spider-Man. There's others, but just in my opinion, based on nostalgia alone, it's high up there on my list. It's not number one. That's another video for another time. We'll talk about what my favorite Spider-Man games are, I suppose, one day. But just as a game as a whole, Spider-Man's framed in the game. He's trying to steal Octavius's device. Octavius, Doc Ock, is made to look like the good guy, and then it's kind of like a snake shedding its skin. It's revealed that he's still evil. He's not, you know, changed at all. Just a great game in general, and it has chase scenes. It has time sequences. I mean, there's all kind of things within the game. It's single player, but if you can get over that and just play the game, enjoy the music, get into the environment, it's a blast to play, just in my opinion. There's not much else I could really say about it other than there are different costumes with different abilities you can unlock, or you can use a cheat, or it's a Game Shark, whichever you prefer, or look up the cheats now and unlock all of them, just the cheat that unlocks everything, because you can do that. The internet wasn't as viable of a source back then as it is now, so you couldn't really do that, but now you can. So it's, you know, that's great. And yeah, it has a lot of really cool costumes. It has a symbiote one. There's one that looks like Captain America style Spider-Man, and an armored suit. And you can actually pick up the armored suit throughout the game, and it gives Spider-Man extra health. And it does if you actually equip it as a cheat. But it's just a great. There's a symbiote suit. I think I said that already. And there's tons of others. There's one that's like his 2099 suit, the like future, almost like if you've ever seen Batman Beyond, that's what it looks like. Very futuristic looking, very cool, and it gives him like double the damage or something like that to enemies. Really cool. So just a great game to play. You can even play as Peter Parker and his web swinging abilities, and the enemies just interact with him as if he was Spider-Man, which I think maybe they could have. I don't know. You got to think about the time. You know, the time in which it was made. They couldn't really do that. I was gonna say if you choose the Peter Parker, you know, costume, maybe they're like, really, you're Spider, you know, that would have been cool. But you're Spider-Man or something like that. That would have been neat. But maybe they couldn't do that. They can now. They can do whatever they want just about now. I mean, we have AI and everything else, so there's not really as many limitations as there were back then. But the stark difference is the same thing with Shadows of the Empire. The limitations to the console and the cartridge storage memory, you know, that can store different aspects of the game and play it through the console. That's how consoles work. And it was limited, so they had to cut it into like comic things for you to read with. It had sound effects and it had things like that. It just wasn't full motion video. But I believe everything other than the 64 version was for full motion video. But I actually prefer the comic look to it because it would have like this little screen, be about like maybe that big on your TV. I know that looks small, right? And it would have cut out like small segments of full motion video, maybe, or like segments of, it's not full motion video, but like segments of the video, uh, part of the other ports of the game. But then it would have text that you would have to read, and it would have each character's font with different lettering. Like Johnny Storm's is like all flame, but then Captain America's is the American flag. I thought that was neat. And then Punisher's is blue, and Daredevil's is red. Spider-Man's is red, and I think it's yellow. Spider-Man's is yellow, I believe. Venom's is like a dark purpley blue. It's just interesting. Carnage's is also red. Just thought that was really interesting. The texts are different. Rhino's is like gray. Really interesting to me that they did that. They didn't have to do something like that. They could have just made them all one color and just said, okay, we're done. But they tried to still give you the same feel as maybe full motion video, so you wouldn't really pay as much attention to that, but just enjoy the gameplay. And that's what you should do. If you don't like that kind of thing, if you don't like reading, I guess, then I'm sorry I'm laughing. That's just funny to me that you don't like reading. But yeah, if you don't like to read text in games, then just enjoy the rest of the game. You can even hit skip, I believe, or cancel, and it'll go straight to the gameplay. But it's vital to me to read it, and that's the one that I grew up with. I didn't grow up with the PS1 or whatever, Dreamcast or anything like that, or the PC versions. So yeah, just a great game, and I think that's about all I can say about that one. So we'll move on to the next one. Number 6 is Battle Tanks. Oh, Battle Tanks. Great game. Me and my brother's favorite game, and my cousin. My cousin I believe he used to play it with us too. And they used to play it together. They're probably the ones that had it, save their allowance money, what have you, to get it. But it has like an explosion on the cover. And it was released December 29, 1998 by none other than 3DO. And 3DO's done tons of other great titles. They did the Army Men titles. They did Warriors of Might and Magic, which I have never finished. I've watched people play. Some of my friends had that game. It's another one that I still want to play to this day and finish. Maybe I will soon. Yeah, they also did the Army Men. There was one that was like all air combat. They did that one. They've done all kind of stuff. They did another Battle Tanks game called Global Assault. And to me, in my opinion, this Battle Tanks is better than Global Assault. I know, probably going to get beat over the head for that one, but it's the one that I grew up playing. And not only is the story good, it's like this virus that's like taking, like, for one, after the like nuclear virus or whatever comes through America, there's like one woman for every, maybe, I think it was like 1,000 or something like that, men. So then like they break off into different, like, I guess gangs or militias or whatever you want to call it, and they start building tanks out of scrap and fighting over these women who they now call Queen Lords because they worship them, because that's the only way to repopulate. And so it's really interesting. It's a great game. It has a great story. It follows Griffin Spade, who is about to propose to his wife, but then this happens and war breaks out and she's taken by the government. He goes after her and he encounters all the Skull Riders. Eventually there's one's called Dark Angels, Nuclear Knights, and they've all been changed. The Urban Decay, I can't remember all of them. Charlie Company, but they've all been changed by this nuclear virus, and there's even in the multiplayer. I want to say this, even in the multiplayer, there's pictures of each one of them, and I think they went into great detail. Like the Nuclear Knights have like 4 arms. They've mutated. I just thought that was really interesting. They have no hair hardly. They've mutated. Their heads are like sunken in. The Urban Decay, like they've mutated. They look like fly people or something. It's just the Dark Angels. Their skin is all like wrinkled and shriveled, and they wear cloaks almost like a monk would wear, like a brown cloak, or a Jedi would wear. Just really interesting. I always thought it was really cool. The Skull Riders still look like bikers. Charlie Company, the picture that it has looks like. There's also called the Aftershocks and the Psycho Brigade. Psycho Brigade are from like an insane asylum, which is crazy. Different time, I suppose. They could. They've done games about insane asylum since. I'm just saying, like the visuals and the way that they did the pictures and everything, they did it justice because they stayed true to the source material. They didn't just make each character or each group or militia or whatever you want to call it look exactly the same. They could have just went the route and said, okay, green tanks, red tanks, blue tanks, gray tanks, black tanks, or something like that. They could have just went that route and said, okay, this color is this one is this one. They gave them their own symbol on the back of their tanks. They gave them their own look to each group. I mean, they did it justice, in my opinion. They did it immerses you more. It makes it feel like you're, I don't know, immersed in it. That's all I can say about that. It did great for immersion when it came out, and still when you play it now. So there's pickups during multiplayer and the single player that you can get: swarmers, guided missiles, mines, typical things that you would think would be in something where they're using tanks. There's even lasers. There's there's a nuke, and I hated it when people used to get that in multiplayer. I still do get it in multiplayer. When I get it, it's fine. When I pick it up, it's okay. But it sucks when you're right next to somebody and they just toss one out. It obliterates everything on the map. So just about. If you're near it, it does more damage. If you're the further you are away from it, the less damage it will do. But it takes out all trees, anything like that. Again, attention to detail. You can run over cars in the game with the tanks. You can run over light poles. You run into the gas pumps at gas, and it'll kind of disintegrate. Just really interesting. If you shoot a gas tank and someone's next to it in the game, or a multiplayer or a single player or anything, it will destroy the tank. I just thought that was really interesting. Even for the time. I mean, look at what year it was. It was 98. So I mean, you can't really just look at the graphics of any of these games. I want to say that, and to say, oh well, they aged terribly. Some of them did. I ain't gonna lie. Some of the graphics, even the ones I've talked about in this video and the previous one, they're not like cutting edge technology, but they're history, and that's how I like to look at them. They're part of history, human history, how games have evolved because from like 64 on, up, and like game systems like like if you look back at the Atari 2600 and then you look at the PS5 and the Xbox One X, yeah, it's come a long way. But you have to look at it objectively and not just subjectively. You look at it from each different perspectives. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it is what it is, and they're all what they are, and they're all, to me, something special because I had memories of it. Just like I said, the multiplayer, it has multiplayer, and I played it with family members, friends, and it was a great time, so that's why I like most of these games, or the story mode was immersive or something of that nature. That's why I enjoy them. So it just means something to me. That may not mean as much to somebody else. Their list is probably totally different, and that's that's all right. You know, that's okay. So now, the last one for this video will be Yoshi Story. And I can't say enough about this. It's got a pink Yoshi on the front. You would think they would have went with the green, you know, typical. You know, that's what Yoshi had been up until this point. We hadn't seen the other colors, I don't believe, of Yoshi. Oh, there is a green one. How about that? In the O right here on Story. I don't know if it'll pick it up. It probably isn't going to. But that's all right. And the other O is actually a egg. That's cute. Thing can be cute. And the fabric behind the pink Yoshi is actually jean material. I actually pointed that out to my wife when I played it, and she watched me play it the other night. I wanted to get a refresher of how good the game really is. This one is number 5, by the way, so it's ranking pretty high. It was another game that my brother had, but there's another reason why it ranks so high to me, not just because of what kind of game that it is, but what it means to me. Like I said, looking at it as a whole, not just for how it looks, but this game aged great, and it was released December 21st, 1997 by Nintendo, of course, because that's one of their properties. And it follows the Yoshis. They're trying to get back their happy tree from the evil Bowser Jr., Bowser's son. It's quirky, it's funny, it has great music, but not only that, there's only, I think, 5 or 6 levels, but you can go back and play if you get all the hearts in each level. I think there's 3 in each level, and you know, like right at the beginning, before you pick your Yoshi, you like you stop it on whichever fruit that you're wanting to be your lucky fruit, and the more of those you get, the more your score goes up more, and you have to eat fruits to progress through each level. There's enemies and things like that to overcome. When you use eggs, you know, to pop bubbles where there's fruit in it, you can get an invincibility heart fruit that has a little parachute on it. There's all kind of other things. There's a couple boss battles in the game. It's just a great time. It's a fun game. It's, you know, eat for everyone. You know, so it's just a fun time. And most of the other games that I talked about, there's 2 of them, Spider-Man and Yoshi Story, were E. The rest of them were T rated. So I just thought I'd mention that. But Yoshi Story also has a great significance to me. That's why it ranked. Another reason it ranks so high. There's 2 main reasons. The visuals hold up today because they've still used some of the same type of formula for. I think it was on Switch. Might have been the Switch or the Wii U, but I think it was on the Switch. It's a Yoshi game, and they use kind of a yarn, or is that what? Yeah, kind of a yarn, fuzzy kind of look. That's where I believe they get this idea from, if I'm not mistaken, because it very much had that stitchy kind of look to it. Even the box, or the manual that's in the box, I actually still have the manual somewhere. They look like little yarn, like stitching, or like, you know, pin and needle type of, sewing needle and thread type of thing. They look like they've been sewn together. You know, really interesting that they use that years later on new gen consoles. So that's one reason that it was significant, because of just how great it looked. You know, some of the skies are jeans or things like that. They have little like jean pockets, like what's on the cover of the cartridge. But not only the visuals, but also I did not just play this with my brother and my cousin. Like I've said about a couple of these games, this was one of the few games that my mother was actually able to play, and I just had a lot of fun teaching her how to play this game, and she'll still play it if she is ever, you know, hanging out with me or something like that, and I bring out the 64. That's the one game that she knows that she can play. So she'll put in Yoshi's Story. Let's play some of it. Just for old time's sake. And that's why it means so much to me, because of the sentimental. I know a lot of people don't like that word, but it is. And that's okay if you don't like it, because it means something to me. I know most of my viewers aren't gonna, they understand what sentiment is, but there are people, unfortunately, out there that don't, and that's unfortunate, because it gave me a lot of great memories with my mom. And I just remember playing it on weekends. You had to do your homework during the week before you could play any 64 or PlayStation 2 or any. I still had 64 and PS2 at the same time. I could play either one. I know a lot of people had this. A lot of kids. The reason I say that, a lot of kids sold theirs and got the next console. My parents let me keep mine, which was, I'm fortunate, because I still have a great collection because of that. So I just thought I'd end this one on a high note. That's the reason Yoshi's Story is at number 5. Not just, some of the games I rank lower, they might look better, or less kid friendly, but it's also the sentiment. It's not just the nostalgia or the look or the feel or the graphics or the music or the who developed it, or it's not any of those things. All that really matters is what it means to you. And if you like any of these games, let me know. And I'm thinking to do a 2-part video. So look for the next part within the next couple. It'll probably be a couple hours from now before both of them are up. And I'm still working on getting that camera up and running, and possibly getting a PC so that I can hook it to be able to do streaming and editing, more editing than what I can do with my phone. I'll have more more storage and more capability with better equipment. So we've got the potential for it. There's a few bumps in the road that I've got to work out. So just look for new content, and until next time, everybody be safe.